Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. We're glad you decided to check us out. God has a specific message of hope for your life and mine today. So listen up.
Time of year at Christmas, we always have this thing in our family. I don't know if you guys do something similar to this, but all of to a spouse or a relative or a family member, but we're supposed to do this. And we put what we want, and then they get something to pick from. Our kids do it for us, you know, and that way we kind of know in the ballpark of what they're looking for. And I'm going to tell you, just confession time, man, I hate the Christmas list. I just do. I do. Because I never know what to put on the list, because all the things I want, they cost way too much. And all the things that are little things, they just become those things that I just keep around the house, you know what I mean? Because I never throw anything away. And my wife will tell you that. I never throw anything away. You know, I've got shoes right now that I just retired this last year, and that I mowed the lawn in. And those were the shoes I played tennis in when I was in the 90s, you know, and I had a pair that I had wrapped up with duct tape from earlier than that she finally got me to throw away. That's literally how it goes, you know, in the Campbell household. So I get these little things and I use them, and they become this just stacked up around the house and all that type of stuff. So I never know what to ask for. It's not that I want to get anything, but a lot of times I don't know what to ask for. Are you like that? Anybody out there don't know what to ask for Christmas? You have a little problem? I just don't know, you know, so this is the tough part of Christmas for me, is giving something that I feel, trying to figure out what is acceptable, you know, to give to family, you know, and what usually ends up happening is my wife calls me or she texts me because they're calling her wanting to know, and I answer every phone call from my wife. I try to answer every text, but that's the one that I run from. I don't return volley on that one. No, I don't. I return that back, and I try to think, and then they get upset, and then I usually, because then they don't have anything that we don't get upset, but you know, they're like, come on, Jim, just give me something to buy for. And usually I come up with it at the last minute, and not a whole lot of thought into it. I appreciate it because they got it for me, and I love them, you know. But that's the thing, you know, and that's the tough part of Christmas for me. That's a first world problem, I would think. You know what a first world problem is? That's a problem that's not really a problem. It's people in the first world have that. It's not life-threatening. It's just an annoyance. It's something that's not really a big deal. And if some people in other parts of the world heard that, they would think, that's your big problem? Oh, give me a break. You know, and so if you're listening on Facebook Live right now and you're listening from somewhere else, and yes, it's a first world problem. I totally identify. I totally accept that. That's what it is, not really a problem. But it is something that annoys me at the Christmas season. You know, and even though I hope to get to the point where that I get the right thing to them, they give the right, and we're all happy, you know, sometimes it doesn't really happen. But we just live through it. And in this series that we've been talking about, this thrill of hope, I talked about that a lot of what we have in our country, what we're dealing with, is a lot of outrage, a lot of frustration that seems to boil up and over into our country. We see a lot of people, it's almost like getting angry is a sign of righteousness these days, isn't it? Because if you're mad, then boy, they're just, I'm mad about something. I'm mad about a cause. I'm mad about something. Then I'm right. And the angrier I am, the less you can really debate me on that, because I'm angry and my feelings make me righteous. It make me right. And I feel like that's a big part of the problem in our country right now that's dividing us, because it's such a time, like Bruce has said before, we catch this series in, is that, I can't really remember a time where we've been more divided as a country in my lifetime, and I think it comes back to this outrage thing. And we talked about last week that it's not so much, I don't think that it's the injustice of the moment. I think a lot of times, it's not so much what's happening right now. That's just sort of an excuse. That's what we attach it to. But really, it's not the injustice of the moment. It's the lack of hope in the future. That's what becomes a problem for us in so many ways. And I think that's a scary part when we look at our culture, because without hope, where do we stand? We talked about last week that, our hope is not a wish. It's not a wish. It's not a feeling that we get. The Bible tells us that hope is a person, and that's Jesus. And the reason we can have so much hope and take confidence in the hope that we have is because our hope, because it is Jesus, our hope has the characteristics of Jesus. Jesus has more power than you have problems. He's got more answers, than you have questions. And we can always look forward to that because we can trust in Christ, and because He's the hope, He's the foundation or the basis of it. The second part of what we talked about is what to hope for, and that's what we'll be talking about this week. Next week we're going to look at, that what to hope for, how to hope is what we're talking about this week. Sorry about that, but I'm trying to give an update for next week. But next week is going to be, what to hope for. And we're going to be talking about that and from Scripture about what to hope for. Because a lot of times I think, much like we don't know what to put on the Christmas list, I think sometimes we're a little bit unclear about what to hope for and what this hope is for and is for us. This week we're going to talk about something called how to hope. The act of hoping itself. And what does that look like? It's not a feeling. It's not simply an emotional thing. It's not a wish. It's not just working or wishing for something, and hoping that we get it. That's not what the act of hoping looks like. But a lot of times for us, that's kind of what it ends up being. The truth is that hoping is a skill. And if we look at the book of Hebrews, we can see some of the characteristics of how to hope. Now, if you got your Bible, now is where we pull that out. If you came, you pull out your Bible, pull out your smart device. You're totally okay to do that. However you need to do it. To find the Hebrews, if you need to look in the table of contents, it's totally okay to find the page number. If you got your smart device, you can just look it up and scroll down the little bitty list till you get to it. Hebrews chapter 6 is where we're going to start in verse 7. And I'm going to read the passage that we're going to deal with this morning. I'm going to go back and I'm going to kind of pick it apart and show you some things in it. But we're starting in Hebrews chapter 6, verse 7. It says, land that drinks in the rain, often falling on it, and that produces a crop useful to those for whom it is farmed, receives the blessing of God. But land that produces thorns and thistles is worthless and is in danger of being cursed. In the end, it will be burned. Verse 9. Even though we speak like this, dear friends, we are convinced of better things in your case, the things that have to do with salvation. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love that you have shown Him as you have helped His people and continue to help them. Verse 11, we want each of you to show this same diligence to the very end, so that what you hope for may be fully realized. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who, through faith and patience, inherit what has been promised. Now, I want to go back and look at a couple of those verses. Let's go back and look at verse 7 and verse 8. It says, land that drinks in the rain, often falling on it, and that produces a crop useful to those for whom it is farmed, receives the blessing of God. But land that produces thorns and thistles is worthless and is in danger of being cursed. In the end, it will be burned. Now, I'm going to tell you just a little bit something that's an idiosyncrasy of mine. I went to Matt and Taylor's wedding, I guess last weekend. So I go over there, and they were serving the meal after it, and I had this lady who was serving the beans, and I got my meat and stuff, and I brought it to the lady with the beans, and she scooped her scoop into the spoon with the holes in the bottom, because that's how it goes when you do beans, and she held it there for a while and wouldn't put it on my plate, and I'm just holding it, and she just looked at me and goes, "I know you don't want the juice running all over your plate," and I'm like, "Oh yes, you are an angel messenger of God, are you not? Jesus sent you and created you, didn't he?" Because the truth is, I hate it when my food touches on the plate. Do you hate that? I'm just going to tell you, I love beans, but the juice from the beans ruins the meat. And I know y'all all say, "Well, it's going to be all touching when it gets to your stomach." Well, that's fine. That's where it can touch, and I ain't got to taste it then, and that's okay. Because I don't like that. I don't like it when my food touches each other on the plate. Because it's just not made to do that. And I've kind of passed that on in some ways to my children. You're welcome, Katie. So I've passed that on to my children, and we have to deal with the food not touching. What's bad is when you get a casserole or a pot pie. My son has it the worst. I'm going to tell on him while he's not here. But he will get in the casserole, and he starts evaluating every little piece in the casserole. And I like that. I don't think I'm going to like that. And it's just like the separating of the goats and the lambs, when at the end of days, when we come and stand before the Lord in the great judgment seat, and it talks about the goats are going one way and the lambs are going the other. It's like he does that with the food. Here's the bad stuff all over here going to hell. Here's all the good stuff. I'm going to eat it. It's like that's what's up. And I keep trying to tell him, "Son, look, just eat it. Just take a scoop of it and throw it in your mouth," because the whole deal about a casserole, if you know it or not, is the mixture of all the food together. Now, you may not like some of the ingredients, but you may not even know, I keep telling you may not even know that is there, son. If you just throw it in your mouth, you ain't going to know. Close your eyes, stick it in your mouth, try the taste. If you really don't like it, then spit it back out, whatever. I don't know. Don't throw up, just do whatever you need to do. But that is how he takes on food. I got to own it because I gave it to him. That's right. He got it honest. I've learned to eat the casserole. Just close my eyes. I look at something else. I look at a ceiling tile. I stick it in my mouth. It tastes good. Okay, I'm fine. But now here's the problem with a lot of that. What the problem is how Braden deals with the casserole is sometimes how we deal with life. You ever know this? You look at your life and you realize, okay, and you start treating it like it's a side dish and you don't want anything to touch. Okay, I don't like this stuff. This is bad. I don't like this part of my life. Okay, I like this stuff. This is good. And here's what Braden will do. If he looks at it and he sees enough things that he thinks are questionable, then that's a bad food and I'm not going to eat it. Sometimes we approach our lives that way. We look at the little pieces and parts of our lives and go, "I don't like that. I would never take that. That's yucky. Why would I want to eat that? That doesn't even look right. And if we see enough of the stuff we don't like, we look at our life and we say, okay, that's bad. I don't need that. We look at our lives like a casserole, and we can't do that with our lives, because what God is, our lives, much like a casserole, good, bad, indifferent, are all meant to be lumped together, and together the taste becomes what it's supposed to be. And when you separate it, you miss out on things that are great in your life. Is that how you approach your life? I hate my job. I hate my job. I don't like my car. My car looks like junk. I can't get a new car. So then my life is terrible. There could be 1,000 things over here that look really good. But because you can find one or two, you judge your entire life by that. And what God is saying, look, land that drinks in the rain often falling upon it and that produces a crop useful for those for whom it is farmed receives the blessing of God, but land that produces thorns and thistles is worthless and is in danger of being cursed. In the end, it will be burned. And what he's saying is when we don't take in or drink in what God has for us, we have to take it all. You can't take part of it. Our job, I tell my kids all the time, your job is not quality control, your job is compliance in our family. In other words, you don't look at what I tell you to do and go, "Well, I don't like that. I'm not going to do it." No, what you do is when I tell you to do something, do it. Just do it and trust me. You may not like it, but in the end, there's a reason for it. And we've talked about different things. I have you do these things that are not pleasurable because they build a certain part of your character that I know when you get to be 25, you're going to need, and I'm not going to be there to enforce. Well, I will be, but I'll be in role of consultant, which means it's your problem, and I'm just the wise sage sitting on the hill you come ask me about, and then you got to deal with it. That's kind of how it works, right? So, because when they get 18, 21, right in that age, I become consultant instead of authority, right? That means you come and you ask me, I give you my opinion, and then you have to deal with it. Right now, it's on me if it don't work, because I'm the authority. I'm responsible. My wife, Katie and I are those. But you look at your life, and you can't take just all of it. You can't take bits and pieces of it and then say, oh, my life is good, and evaluate your life. Oh, my life is good, or oh, my life is bad. So how should we approach life? Do you pick the pieces out of it? I want you to think about that as we go to verse 9. Verse 9 says this, even though we speak like this, dear friends, we're convinced of better things in your case. The things that have to do with salvation. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. See, the truth is what we have to understand is when God gives us whatever he gives us, he is still a just God. God is not someone who gives us the things that we have because he hates us, because he doesn't love us, because he wants bad things for us. God talks about gifts, and he says, look, if you can give good gifts to your kids, how much more am I going to give you good stuff overall? I mean, the truth is that everything you have has a negative to it. You realize that? If you have a car, it can be the most awesome car in the world until it breaks down, and then you have to come out the pocket to go pay for it. It can be awesome until it runs out of gas. Then you have to go buy gas, and you look at the price of the gas, and you go, oh my goodness, look at the price of this gas. This is ridiculous. I can't handle this. It's too much. Everything you have, no matter what it is, there's an upside and a downside in this life, and that's because of sin. But here's the thing that God promises. Look, I am going to give you a life that is greater than you could possibly ever hope or imagine, but this is in total. And when God looks at his life and what he's given you, God is looking at everything that that you've experienced to this point and the things that are coming in the future. And he says, boy, when you get through with that, you're going to think it's awesome. But now there might be a point where you're catching an olive in your casserole and you're like, ugh, I don't like that. You might be right there right now. And if you evaluate the casserole by the olive, then you're probably not going to think your life is so awesome. But God is saying, look, I have a huge, long, complicated, intricate life for you. And when you take all of that in, when you drink in all the rain, and when we think about rain, rain is not always an awesome thing. When it rains outside, as it's supposed to do this afternoon, you don't all of a sudden think, yay, it's raining. No one does that, especially when you're going to play football or you're going out to play tennis or something like that. And it starts to rain. You're like, dog, why did it have to rain? Now, in your brain, rain is necessary. But it's not always awesome. And what God is saying in the verses prior, he says, look, land that drinks in all the rain and then produces a life, produces a crop that is appropriate, or it's right for the person for which it's farmed for, will receive the blessing of God. But those who take in that rain and produce junk, thorns and thistles, they're in danger of being cursed. So when God gives you something and you're taking it in and you're saying, okay, you can get into that point where what you're producing, what you're allowing to come out of it is in danger of cursing your outlook on what's going on with you and making this much harder of a life to live than what you have right now. But God is faithful. And throughout Scripture, God has shown us his faithfulness and his justice to be a consistent part of his character. You may think, in the midst of where you are, I've done so much for you, God. Why are you, the truth is that's crazy. He's done way more for you. I mean, we're looking at one little thing, and there are billions of things that he's doing for you at the moment, has done for you in the past, and is planning for you in the future. A lot of times we have to run over mounds and mountains of good things to get to the one bad thing. We had to step on a bunch of stuff and climb over it to get to the bad thing that we can complain about at the moment. But the truth is God has a better plan for you. And this talks about how we are to hope, believe it or not. I want to talk about two things about how we are to hope. This is how we are to hope. Number one, It says, take in all that life has for you. If you want to know the skill of hoping, it starts with this. You look at whatever you have, whether it's messy, nasty, or whatever, and you just embrace it. I'm going to tell you one of the yuckiest things I've ever done. Well, it's not the yuckiest thing I've ever done. It is yucky, okay? One of my boys, we're going to play some football, right? And when I was in college, and it started to rain. And I was like, okay, we're not going to play football. And my buddy Scott was like, oh no, we're going to play mud football. I'm going to tell you something. My son has the tactile issues of the sand and stuff like that. I don't have it to his degree, but it bothers me a little bit. Some of that stuff I've had to work through lotion and stuff like that. That's not all cool. So anyway, I'm going, you want to play what? No, we're going to play football in the mud. It's flooding. It's going to be awesome. We'll play tackle and everything. Of course, I would never do that now because, anybody hits me and it's just like, out of joint. But anyways, but back then, I didn't care, because you get up, me and Steve were talking about it. Katie and I were watching at a wrestling tournament the other day, and I'm watching people get flopped on the mat. I'm thinking, every time I see that, of course, I think when I was their age, I did that on purpose. Hey, look at this, And, that's just what you do because you have no idea what it feels like to be older. And when you do, you're like, I don't want to do that. But anyway, so we go out and we play this game of mud football. And the only way you can enjoy mud football is you just grab it. You can't try to not get wet and not jump in puddles and stuff like that. And you can't worry about falling down or anything. Or if you get wet, you can't, I need to run in and change a shirt. I'm cold. You can't do that because you don't enjoy it. The way you enjoy mud football is you jump on it and you grab it and you hold it with both hands. And when you fall, you make sure you slide further. It's stuff like that. You take people out, you take them out, man. You enjoy it, you grab it, you go for it. That is how we need to attack life. Because hope, that's how we hope. We take in all that life has for you. In Matthew 5:45, Matthew wrote this. He said, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. You can't pick out the bad things and pick out the good things. God says, look, I'm going to give everybody some of that. This is a world that has been affected by sin. There's no one that can run through this life without getting dinged up, okay? Or getting derailed, or without getting knocked down, or really muddy and nasty. It's going to happen. Good things happen and bad things happen. And my son all the time, bad things always happen to me sometimes. I'm picking on Braden. That's one thing I was like, I'll stop that right there. But bad things always happen to me. I said, but son, bad things always happen to everybody. Usually when he loses a game. When he wins a game, it's not a big deal. But it's awesome. That's what was supposed to happen. But when I lose, that was not supposed to happen because my son is uber competitive. I have no idea who he got that from, but it's Katie. But anyway, so it's a big deal. And sometimes we take that mentality into our lives. Let me tell you something. Jesus told us in John, we're going to have trouble. He said, look, I told you, it is coming. You're going to have issues in your life. It's going to happen. He said, even what he said was, he told the disciples, he said, look, I'm going to tell you all the things that are going to happen in the future. Now, at the end of it, he said, I told you that, so when it's bad, you'll know good's coming. It's not like I tell you that because it's going to be great, awesome. And some of the things he told them were scary things. You go back and read that. Some of the things that he told them were scary things. And he said, I told you all of that so that you'd have faith. Because when it happens, you'll know I told you it's coming. And so you can trust that what I said later is coming too. And you can trust in me. I think we've got to respond. Realize that most of how your life ends up is not the situation that was placed in front of you, but how you responded to it. That determines the quality of where your life is good or bad. It's how you take it. It's what you do to it. In the life of a Christian, it's did you respond in honoring the Lord? Do you respond in an honoring way to God with the situation that's in front of you? I can tell you, if you don't respond in a way that honors the Lord, it's not going to go well. It's going to get worse. You may even think, it's going to get better, like somebody responds to you in an ugly manner, and you have this great tell-off line, and you tell them off, and you prove them wrong, and they look like an idiot in front of all your friends. You get to go high-five everybody, and, whoa, yeah, get you some of that. All of this stuff. But eventually, that's going to come back to you. Eventually, there will be a way. God's not pleased with that. God's not pleased with that. And if it doesn't please God, it's not going to end up well. Most of the things that happen in our lives depend on how we respond to them. Let me ask you this. When it says we have to think about the casserole living. It's all good and bad. How do I respond to the good things and the bad things in a way that will honor God? And in every moment, no matter what comes at me, I have an opportunity to succeed in that moment and gain the best of that moment than I could possibly ever dream or imagine. Either in that exact moment, I see it, I get the end of it, or I set it up for later, and God has the payoff years down the road, or months down the road, or a week later. I don't know. But when I live in a way that is hopeful and trusting in God, what do? I said, I produce a crop useful for those for whom it is farmed. Those people receive the blessing of God. Who are you farming your life for? Are you farming it for you? That's not who it's supposed to be farmed for. Your life, especially as a Christ follower, is supposed to be farmed for God. Who do you look for to honor? Who do you look to honor in your decisions? Your kids? Yourself? Your wife? Your job? Now, those are all nice goals to have, but ultimately the only catch-all that you have for everything starts with how you honor God with the decisions that you make. The second thing is that we take in all that life has for you, but you farm your land for Christ. And what are you talking about, Jim? So is this another one of those, colloquialisms that we can't really understand? A lot of times I come up with that. There's a friend of mine in Fort Worth. And every now and then I'll spit something out that my parents used to say when I was younger. And it may be right, or it may be something I've just kind of perverted and twisted around, or something I didn't understand what they were saying, and I just kind of sounds like what they said. And he looks at me and goes, there's another one of those. I always come up with some weird saying from, 40 going west. They're going like 40 going west. He's like, what is that? And I'm like, well, I don't really know. My mother used to say that all the time. I'm assuming it was like I-40 or something like that. I don't know. I just know that means fast. And as a kid, you say these things. I'm not saying this is not another colloquialism to farm your land for Christ. This is a very an intricate part of living, living your life. In Hebrews 6:7, it says this: land that drinks in the rain, often falling on it, and produces a crop useful to those for whom it is farmed, receives the blessing of God. You have to think back to the question I just asked. Who are you farming your life for? A lot of times people think that I can reach happiness by chasing happiness. And they fail in that so miserably, and it's so sad, because they don't realize that happiness is a byproduct. It's not a destination. I don't chase happiness by trying to find the things that will make me happy. I find happiness by following God in all my decisions, regardless of what I think they will result in. And happiness is a thing that comes from that here and there. But if I chase it, if I only do things that I think will make me happy, eventually I find out that I've been chasing a different God that can't deliver, and I'm not happy. How many times have you ever gotten the thing you very much wanted, and you got it, and you were like, so what? Man. We've all been there at some point or time. Who are you farming your life for? Who gets the first of your crops? Who gets the first call on what you produce? Are you a James 1 guy or gal? James 1, it's a great chapter. And it's the book of James. That's Jesus' brother, half-brother, I guess. Wrote a book. He was a leader in the early church. And God, inspired him, wrote through him to write the book of James. And one of the things that he says in that in the chapter 1, one of the big truths that he brings out of that is, look, if you come to me for a solution, I'll give it to you. But if you come into me for an option, not so much. Because I'm not on the level of your aunt, and I'm not on the level of your boss, or that dude that you think is so smart, that's your friend, that seems it all together. They give you opinions. I give you the answers. And you have to treat it as such, because I'm not going to waste my time giving you an answer when you have no intention to take it. That's a double-minded person, and they're unstable in all their ways. And when we a lot of times we come to our lives and we approach it, and it's like sometimes I see this happen with Christians as well a lot, is like we know what we want to do, but we want God to come alongside us rather than us seek God about what he wants, and then we come alongside him. And the former is a dangerous way to live your life, because I'm going to tell you something, and this is just me and you, okay? And whoever's on Facebook. God's not going to come over to your side of things. You know why? He's not going to come over to my side of things. You want to know why? It's because my side's wrong. If my side was right, it would be what God would be wanting me to do, because he's the only one that knows all of it, and it's completely right. You want to know why? Because my judgment, my perspective on life, the things that I've seen and the ways that I think are messed up. They're tainted by sin. Do you ever think about this? You know, one of the funniest videos that I run across these funny videos on social media all the time, right? They just pop in your feed. Most of them, they have somebody getting hurt. And I think that's hilarious. It's like I saw this little video of like brothers and sisters, you know, or brothers and big brothers, you know. And one of them is like this little kid's like running, and the kid takes a swing and goes, whoa, and knocks him right in the back of the head and he face plants, you know. And my first reaction was, that was hilarious. Or you'll see somebody get hurt. You know, they die. These people that die, they swing off these. I've seen some of these. They swing off tire swings or something, or swings over the water. You know, like at the river and stuff. And somebody hangs on too long, and they end up flipping way over the left, and like belly flopping out in the middle somewhere. There was this one where this dude. What was he on? He was on. He was on something. I can't remember what he was on. But it was like you begin the video. And you see it, and he's on this thing, and there's a rope that's going off screen, and all of a sudden you hear, go! And you hear this, boom! And as they pan across, he goes dragging, and you realize there's a motorboat that is dragging him off the shore, and he hits this giant ramp. You know, it goes up in the air, it throws him off of it, and the dude is like flying out in the middle of nowhere, and then smack out in the water, and it can't be that deep. I think the video was entitled, Why Women Live Longer Than Men. But and you want to know why? Because everybody on the shore is going, did you see that? Oh man, that's hilarious. And I was like, you realize he could have broken every bone in his body right there, because the water's like that deep out there. But your first reaction, you think about that. Have you ever thought about that? You know why? Sometimes I wonder why I laugh at people getting hurt so bad. It's because sin has infected me so deeply that it's even messed with my humor and my sense of humor. Because when you think about it, they could have got seriously hurt. I should have compassion on that. But it's funny because of how it looks. Do you realize that, do you ever think that sin may have so deeply ingrained your thinking and your thought processes and your reactions that you may be reacting in sin without even knowing that that's what's pushing you that way? And it may seem completely right to you because you don't have a basis. You've never lived any other way. That's why God's word is so valuable. That's why God says, farm your life appropriately. Farm it for me. Because if you do it appropriately, I will bring the blessings to you. And part of that is not God says, okay, jump up and down. Here's a piece of meat. Some of that is when you do it right, right things happen. And when you do it wrong, wrong things happen. It's just it was cause and effect in a lot of ways. But God set it up that way, and he's giving us good advice. So we should farm our life in a proper way. But a lot of us, we want to look for a yes man type of God. We do. You know, it's true. I struggle with that myself. There's times I want to do something, and I want God to come alongside me. But I'm going to tell you something, and realize this. Following a yes man God leads you to a no way life. Because life comes when I don't follow my way, but when I leave my way, my sin-tainted sin, my sin judgment, messed up stuff, and I begin to follow what God wants me to do. And the byproduct of that is the blessings of God. You know, there was, y'all know I'm an Alabama fan, right? Okay, so anyway, yes, Steve, we had a setback last night. Yes, that's right. You know, no Heisman for Tua. That was my quarterback, no Heisman trophy, but it's no big deal. mean, it's not my award. I wasn't there. So anyway, but last week, right, one of the reasons that our quarterback didn't win the Heisman last night, was the week before we played in the SEC championship against Georgia. And he got hurt at the beginning of this game. Now I'm going to give you a backstory to this, that you may already know. If you do, great. If you don't, I'm going to just refill you, and we'll be all on the same page when we move forward. A year ago, we had a different starting quarterback. His name was Jalen Hurts. And he had started 26 games, had won 26 and lost 2 that he started. 2 games were lost that he started. One of them was the national championship game. The other one was against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. But that's tremendous success because he walked onto campus. Wasn't highly recruited. He beat out a bunch of really highly recruited guys to become the leader, of the team. And as I was watching stuff last year, I believe it was about a year ago, I listened to an interview with the FCA director at Alabama, which, I don't think, if I look at Nick Saban's life and demeanor and stuff like that, I don't really think he's a strong Christian, but one thing he does is, I don't know if he's even a believer. One thing he has figured out is that if I let this FCA guy around my guys play better and they handle life better. So he's here, free reign, take over. Anybody, you want to start Bible studies with my group, you go at it. Guys, you follow this, do what he says. Very much like that. And what you're seeing a lot as I listen to this FCA guy was that you're seeing a lot of disciple making going on within the Alabama football team. And I'm not saying that's because they win. That doesn't have anything, God's got bigger purposes than that, okay? But it's just a fact of what it is. And what has happened is you see, there are people that have discipled Jalen. Jalen is actively discipling others. Now, I don't know how great a Christian he is, and I'm not trying to anoint him as some sort of awesome theological whatever, but there's a good story here to understand. So he gets to the national championship game last year. Everything's going his way, and he can't throw it to save his life. And he's doing a terrible job. And at halftime, they bench him. And they bring in Tua Tagovailoa, who is our quarterback this year, who was up for the Heisman. And if you don't know the story, we were down to Georgia. He comes back. He's never really played meaningful minutes the entire year. He's a true freshman. He comes in. He leads us back to tie. We go to overtime, and on fourth and 26, or 3rd and 26. In overtime to win the game, he comes up with a touchdown pass that everybody's like, I can't believe you could do that. And we win the game and beat Georgia. Then all of a sudden, he's the toast of the town. And about the only thing people want to know from Jalen Hurts is if he's going to be mad about it or not. And to his credit, very supportive. They tried to interview him. They tried to shoot the camera on him during the game. When he's on the sidelines, is he moping on the sidelines? No, it wasn't. He's up. He's cheering his teammates. He's handled it really, really well. So he goes into the offseason, and he's lost his starting job. I don't know about you, a lot of these guys, but you go to Alabama, you go to a big school, you're looking for prospects beyond then where you play football. And it's kind of hard to get those if you're not on the field. And a lot of people said he should transfer because he was the Southeastern Conference Player of the Year his freshman year. He could obviously play somewhere else. He should go somewhere else. And I remember I saw an interview. I read an interview. Well, it was a Reddit. I didn't see it. I read it. And they quoted and they said he decided to stay. And they asked him why. He said, I prayed about it, and I felt like God wanted me to stay, so I'm staying. And people were just like, I can't believe it. Every pundit out there, every talking head on TV is like, that's crazy. He's throwing his career away. This is ridiculous. Why is he doing this? And they kept waiting for him to change his mind and transfer. And even his dad got kind of upset one time. He was like, my son's going to be the biggest free agent in the world, and you kept waiting for the hammer to drop, and it didn't. It got to spring practice. Nope, he didn't leave. He's still there. He's competing. He lost the job in the summer. He's got to transfer in the summer. No, it gets to August, and they're about ready to play, and, here you go. He's going to throw a year away. Oh, no, he's staying, and he stayed. I remember him putting up a quote from John that says, is a quote of Jesus, and he said, if you don't know what, I forget. It says, you know not why I do what I do, but one day you will, basically is the gist of the verse. And you can look it up. I'm sorry, I didn't plan to quote it today, so I didn't really have it on the cue. And you see that throughout. He stayed through the August practice. He started playing the games. He said, well, if he plays in the game, he's going to lose his red shirt. He's going to lose a year of eligibility. He's going to a year to prove himself to get to the next level. And he keeps staying. And he's playing in mop-up duty because Tua is really good. He gets to play a few plays here and there. But if he plays 4 games, he could still leave after 4 games because there's a new rule, yay. And then the 5th game comes, and he comes out on the field. And he gets a standing ovation from all of Bryant-Denny Stadium because they realize he just burned his year right there. That's a year of eligibility he can't have back to show what he can do to play in the pros. And so he stays the rest of the year, and he's playing second fiddle to Tua the whole year. And it comes to the SEC championship, okay? And Tua has to have a great game to win a Heisman. But he gets hurt in the first series, and he continues to try to play, but it's very obvious he's not playing. He's not playing well, and he's not walking well either. So you know he's really, really hurt. So it comes to halftime, and you go through halftime, and they come back out with Tua, and he's still not doing well. He did throw a touchdown pass. Guys within 7. Here you go, and he gets to the 4th quarter, and somebody rolls over on Tua's leg when he's trying to throw it, and then he's just done. They're having to help him off the field. They're calling for the cart. They're all this stuff. And so who do they turn to? They turn to Jalen. Now, here's the thing. A year ago in that very stadium, against the same team, Georgia, who we were playing last week, in that very stadium, he gets benched at halftime because he can't do the job. 4th quarter, he gets sent back out on the field. He makes 2 miraculous drives for scores. Doing all the things, passing the ball, amazing. Doing all the things that he got benched for a year ago. And they win the game. And he got on the platform, and I'll never forget what he said when he got on the platform. He gets on the platform, and the lady, the interview person, they're handing him the trophy. What made you stay? He said, look, I put it in God's hands. And she kind of looked at him. He said, yeah, I put it in God's hands, and he handled it for me, and here we are. Redemption from the year before. The hero from a year before. And people talk about he's a legend in Alabama lore because everybody's going to be like, he's the guy that stayed. When everybody else was transferring and going anywhere, he stayed. Now, that's a great story. But it's not just a great story. A lot of great stories don't begin as a great story. Oftentimes, great stories just don't start out that way.
Jalen, we live in this era where players oftentimes, especially at quarterback, when things don't go their way, they tend to want to go to greener pastures. You've decided to stick it out. Can you talk about that journey and why you felt that it was important to stay at Bama and eventually get this kind of opportunity to kind of save your season for you and your teammates?
Well, I can tell you it's been a long time coming. It's been a long year. I can look back after the national championship game. I'm in the hotel room with my parents, my brother and my sister, and I'm in my parents, my mom and dad's arms crying. And I look up at my dad, I say, what are we gonna do now? And he told me, he looked me in my eyes, he told me, he said, we're gonna fight. And I've been fighting for a year, not knowing what the result would be, competing, keeping faith, and God was with me yesterday.
I saw at the end of the game the Hail Mary attempt from Georgia falls incomplete. The camera cuts to Coach Saban, and you're there with him, and you reached in and grabbed him and tried to say something to him. What did you say?
I told Coach Saban, I said, everything happens for a reason. And that's been a thing that I tell him all the time. Every time we meet up and just chatter and talk, I tell him everything happens for a reason, and I'm bought into the process.
But imagine you're for a year. It's hard and it's difficult, and God tells you to stay, and you don't know why. But it happens for a reason. It's not always easy. You may be in a season right now where God's told you to do something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, and it may be very, very difficult for you. But God said do it, so you trust it. It's not always easy, and life isn't like that, but how do we fight? And his dad said, look, we're going to fight. For Christians, the way we fight really is with hope. Jesus said in John 14:15, if you love me, you keep my commandments. Paul writes in the book to the church at Galatia, in the book of Galatians in 5:20, he says, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I love the part of his interview where he said, look, I fought not knowing what the outcome or what the result would be. And he said, all things happen for a reason, and I trust in the process. And I'm not trying to make him out to be Billy Graham or anything, but there's a lesson to be learned in that for us in following Jesus. I don't know what my outcome's going to be. I may get cancer next year and die. I don't know. I'm not trying to scare you kids. I'm not speaking prophecy over that. But I'm saying, that could happen. I might not make it home from church today. That could happen. Things may go south for some point in the future, or it may be awesome. I don't know. I don't know what the result or the outcome is. But like he said, I don't know what all things happen for a reason. I'm bought into the process. And that is how I hope in Christ, is I am bought in to the process of Jesus. I trust in the hope that he has. I trust that he is faithful. I trust that he is just, that he remembers who I am, that he loves me, and he has a promise for me. And if he allows something to come into my path, there's a reaction that I need to give to that situation that can honor him and better me. And rather than question it and be frustrated about it, which I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes I do, but this is where I come back around to. I am bought into the process of Jesus. And that's how we hope. Not only do you take all that life has for you, not only do you farm your land for Christ, here's the third thing in the way that you hope. You stay until the end. You stay until the end. In verse 11 it says, we want each of you to show this same diligence to the very end. To the very end. Show this diligence to the end. Stay to the end. Why? So that what you hope may be fully realized. I'm going to tell you something about a casserole. When you put a casserole in there, I'm not a great cooker, but the way I understand it is you need to put certain things in, sometimes in a certain order, at a right time in the cooking process, and it has to stay in there and be cooked for a certain amount of time before it tastes right. Before it tastes right. Certain ingredients in a certain order for a certain amount of time before it tastes right. And I'm going to tell you that God is creating a casserole of your life. A lot of us think God cooked us up a life and we taste it at any certain point in time. And we think it's good or it's bad. But I'm going to tell you, you can't know what God's creating in you until you stay till the end to see what he's done when he's finished with you. If I walk up to someone cooking a casserole and I just indiscriminately pick up something and jam it in my mouth, I might think it's the worst thing in the world. Well, I didn't wait until the end. And every day, God is putting a new ingredient in your life. Every day, he's putting something there. There's a period of time that you're in the middle of and you don't understand why. God is cooking you. God is making things better. He needs to have that time for you to get to a point where he's ready for the next thing that you need to have in your life. And if you're not reacting well and farming your land for Christ, you're not receiving the blessings. You're in the danger of being cursed because you're tasting and you're evaluating way too early. And you're stopping your trust in God. And you're making your problems worse. When things are the worst, that's when you should trust God the most, not question him. That is how we hope. We stay until the end of whatever God has for us. And a lot of us think God cooked us up alive and we taste it right now and it's what it'll be. It tastes bad and so it's not good. That's all it will ever be, but that's not true. That's not an answer born of faith. That's an answer destined for failure. And you have to grasp that God is making a casserole of your life every day. He'll be cooking it throughout your entire life. It will never be done until you're done. And what Jesus said in John 10:10, that I came so that they may have life and have it to the full, or the message says it, that they may have life and have it greater and better life than you could possibly ever dream or imagine. That is always true with every ingredient that he puts in. In the good times and in the bad, better is always coming. I don't care if you've been at a point, maybe you've had a point in your life and you thought it was the most awesome time in the world and you're never going to get back to that awesome time in the world. I'm telling you that's a lie, because John 10:10 says better is still coming no matter where I've been. I don't have to live in the past because the better is still out there in the future. And that is the same for every person who follows Christ. That's the hope that we have in Jesus. We have a life for Christ is never judged 50% of the way through. It's only seen by those who persevere to the end. The end of what? The day? The week? The month? No, your life. 2 Timothy 1:12 says this. It says, that is why I am suffering here in prison. Paul was in prison, right? So he's in prison. And he says, look, this is why I'm suffering in prison, okay? All right? It's not that I don't think you guys could break me out. It's not that I might find a way to work out something and get out, but listen, that is why I am suffering here in prison. But I am not ashamed of it, for I know the one in whom I trust, and I am sure that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him until the day of his return. A faithfulness in the characteristics of Christ, that no matter if I'm in prison and it's terrible, I know that God is able to entrust what I have given him, and better is on its way. And I just have to stay to the end to see it. Don't walk out of the movie before the last scene. You miss the payoff of what God has created for you. I'm going to tell you, hope isn't realized until the end of done. Until the end, it has come. To act in hope is to act in Jesus until the end. That is the act of hope. When I'm presented with a crazy mountain of problem that I know I probably can't overcome on my own, my job is to, Lord, what would you want me to react in this situation with? However you say, I will do, and then to do it and to watch what God does with it over time. I'm to plant that seed and to wait until it harvests, even if it harvests long after I'm done. The truth is that when I'm done and I'm in heaven, if it waits longer than my life is, that's great. I'll be in heaven. I'll be able to see the whole thing. But I have to wait through the end. Here's the last thing I want to leave you with. You know, we talked about the Christmas list at the first of the sermon. The sad part of life is that a lot of us look at hope in Christ as like a Christmas list. Okay, God, I'm going to write out my list of the things that I want. I'm going to hand it to you, and either you bring me what's on that list or I have no hope. And if you don't bring what's on this list, then you're not really the God you said you are. That's a failed act of hope. That's Christmas list living. How we live as Christians is not Christmas list living, but casserole living. We look at our lives, we grab the whole thing, we stick the spoon in deep, and I say, I don't care what it looks like in there, I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to be proud, and I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to trust the Lord that when it is all done, it is worth every moment. Hope isn't about getting the things on your list. It's you trusting that the end result of God's list is in reality what you wanted and didn't even realize you wanted it yet. That's what hope is. It's casserole living. It's where you grab all of life that is before you. And because if God has allowed it in your path, it's necessary. And you honor God with the way you handle it. You trust the process regardless of what the outcome looks like. And you can do that because you know who you've placed your hope in. You know who your hope is. You know the characteristics of Jesus. And you know that your future when you follow Christ expresses those characteristics that Christ has. That is what's waiting for you. And it may have ups and downs, peaks and valleys. It may go through our life and be difficult. But at the end, it will all be worth it. And it will be worth it throughout eternity.
Thanks for being a part of Bay West today. Bay West Church meets at 100 Emerson Road in Palm Bay at 11 a.m. on Sundays. Please feel free to check us out at baywestchurch.org, or you can follow us on Facebook